All right, so Legacy Education and Environmental Discovery, or LEAD, is a 2-day intensive educator workshop. We try to pick a different biologically unique landscape every year, and we invite area educators to the workshop, and we connect them with natural resource professionals from the area, hands-on experience, and resources to take back to their classroom to use to connect their students to their outdoor Nebraska. We have been to, in the first year, in 2011, we were in the Verdigris-Bazile Creek BUL, and all the way to 2019 with the Oglala Grasslands BUL. We've been to Indian Cave, BUL, Rainwater Basin, Les Canyons, Middle Niobrara, Pine Ridge. And today we have with us one for sure. Hopefully the other one will overcome her technical difficulties. And we have two teachers, one for sure, that is going to give us her experience being in this educator workshop. And that is Katie Karr. She's an education assistant and volunteer coordinator with Hastings Museum. And if Tiffani jumps on, Tiffani Herfordt, she is a 6th and 8th grade teacher, science teacher at and middle school science curriculum coordinator at St. Pius and St. Leo's School. So Katie take it away, Katie.
Hi guys, I'm gonna quick see if I can share my screen. There we go. As Jamie said, my name is Katie. I work at the Hastings Museum in Hastings, Nebraska. So all of my teaching is informal teaching, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page on what I mean when I say informal. So at the museum, it can be multiple ages and topics and time length. We don't have a set schedule. We get the luxury of kind of picking and choosing what we talk about. We are a larger museum too, so I have 3 floors of topics I can pick from. Sometimes it's school groups of typically K through 6th grade. Occasionally we'll get middle school or high school groups. It can be open public, so just anyone in the community that wants to come. Summer camps, which again would be the K through 6th grade age range. And we also do education for other teachers on helping them get resources to their classroom. So everything I talk about is stuff I got from one LEAD workshop. We tend to go every year. I just want to share how valuable just going to one can be. So I'll do a quick snapshot and then I'll get more in depth on each of these. So the one I'm going to talk about is from 2018, and it was all on wetlands. So the reason we like to go to them is kind of twofold. One is we get the really cool opportunity to meet people who like to nerd out on topics as much as we do, which isn't often we get to do that. We have an annual program called SIP, or Spirits with and Interesting People, where basically people who have really cool hobbies or jobs get to share that hobby and job for about 10 minutes to a group of people, and then they go around. We kind of compare it to speed dating interesting topics. So a lot of the presenters that they bring in will then kind of sideswipe to bring in for our programming. We tie a lot of the resources into school programs. A lot of the standards want Nebraska specific examples, which makes sense. We're in Nebraska. I just happen not to know everything there is to know about wetlands or any of these other ecosystems to the degree that a teacher would find more helpful than what they could do. So getting those resources from a trusted site such as LEAD has been super helpful. They've already done the legwork. They've gathered it all for us. They made it really presentable and easy to understand. It allows us to have various toss-in activities. So that just means on any program, if we happen to be talking about water conservation or soil, There's activities we got from this workshop that can be tossed in. And we can also better interpret our exhibits. One really big example of that, one of our cases has this big core sample that you guys can see. It's in this really dark corner of our museum. And before we'd be like, this is a soil sample, it's really important. And that was basically all we could tell you about it. After this workshop, we were able to talk more about how do you get a soil sample? Why is it important to get it? And what can you find in it? Which then led us to do an activity in another exhibit that's slightly better lit, which is our rocks and minerals exhibit. So on, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but the taller picture, we just kind of took all of the layers that are beneath Nebraska and roughly how long they are to give that visual again. And we have a lot of minerals on display. Some you can find in Nebraska, some are from all over. So what we asked students to do is they basically had this piece of paper that had common minerals that you can find in Nebraska, which we learned through this workshop, that you can find in the soil and just around the area. And then they had to go and try to find that mineral on our display. And this is something we never really thought of doing before. I'm not really sure why, but it was kind of a nice resource. The students really, really enjoyed it. This one was a more formal setting. So this is a school coming in. They booked our rocks and minerals class, and we're having them look for these Nebraska-based minerals. And it's kind of cool because sometimes the kids will know a few of the minerals. That's the ones they talked about in class. So then they get really excited to see a real sample of that mineral. Another area in our museum is the Nature Nook. If you've been here, you'll know that it's all about habitats and ecosystems and all things great. And it is Nebraska focused. However, a lot of kids see this as a giant play space, and they don't necessarily read all the signs about what an ecosystem is or what a habitat is. And before going to lead workshops, I'll be honest, my understanding of habitats and ecosystems was probably about that of a fourth grader when they start learning them in school. Of there's animals, they have basic needs, and it's great. After going to lead, I'm a lot more comfortable talking about very specific ecosystems. So like I said, we went to one on wetlands. We have a lovely 3-foot area that represents all of Nebraska wetlands. And one thing we point out after going to lead is that this is the ideal situation. So everyone has their 5 basic needs met. You can find them in here. There's food, water, shelter, all of that stuff. But we're able to make it more real for the students by saying it's not going to be ideal out in nature. There's always something that can be messing with those needs. One activity we did at the workshop was learning how to tell a water source is getting too polluted using indicator species and a few other things. And to be perfectly honest, if I would have just gotten this activity outright, I probably wouldn't have done much with it because it was very overwhelming. It talked about pH values and toxicity and things that I'm sure are super important, but at where my knowledge level was, just wasn't clicking with me. But then Jamie and Monica walked us through the activity and made us a lot more comfortable with what was being presented, to the point now, the activity, basically what you do is you have coins and rubber bands and beads that get thrown in this tub, and kids get to learn, if they have too much of one thing, that means the sample of water probably isn't good because of these reasons and so forth. And that's something we get to do with kids, where they get to be creative and think, why is this a bad thing or why is this a good thing? So that's just one activity we were able to get from this. And seeing them model it, so like Monica and Jamie being way more experts on this than me or my coworkers, we get to see how would they introduce this to children, how would they walk it through it. They've already kind of troubleshooted the lesson plan, so to say. They know what works. And then I'm just able to take this finished product and be like, look at this really cool thing that you're going to think I did, but really I'm borrowing from other really cool people. And that's great that we get to do that. And on top of that, like I was saying before, you get all this condensed information of what a wetland is, why does it matter, where are they in Nebraska? So I don't have to go looking for all of that. I know it's from a trusted source. So that's pretty awesome. That's pretty much what we use it for, is just tossing in their activities and our programming, using their information to make our exhibits even better and to be able to tell a more holistic picture, and really tying it back to Nebraska, which comes in really handy, like I said, with the state standards. If you should have any questions, because I know we're all talking super fast, feel free to reach out to me at any time. The museum is closed, but we are at this time still in our office, so I'm pretty responsive back to messages. Otherwise, I think I saw that Tiffany got in.
Yes, Tiffany is in. And if you can stick around for the 10-minute questions, that would be at the end. That would be great, Katie.
Perfect.
If you do that. Hi, Tiffany. Katie, if you can stop sharing your screen and Tiffany will take over.
Hello.
Glad you could make it.
I know, gosh, for some reason on all of our school computers, Zoom will not load, but I had a colleague that happened to have her laptop here. Can get my screen shared on laptop. Okay, here we go. Okay, let me pull up my presentation here. Oops, goodness sakes. Okay, slow here. We'll get on here. Well, it's coming on. My name is Tiffani Herfordt. Thank you so much for having me here today, Jamie. I appreciate that you asked. So I began my teaching career in 2000. So it's been a while. So I was working on my Master of Science in biology at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And I was hired as a graduate teaching assistant, which I considered to be really a great opportunity just to pay my tuition and earn a little money. I was working on a research project in fire ecology and how small mammals of the prairie are affected by burning. I'd been accepted to a graduate program in Pennsylvania, and I was kind of just buying some time. I deferred my acceptance there for a year. I was newly married. We had just signed a lease on our apartment. And so I was just sticking around Omaha for one more year. I didn't know that my path was about to change. And as it turned out, I loved teaching, and being a graduate teaching assistant showed me that. So while others in my graduate research program thought I was crazy, and to be honest, I probably am, I began working on my secondary teaching certification while I was concurrently finishing my last semester in my biology master's program. So I started my first teaching job in 2003 in public high school in Omaha. I was teaching freshman biology, but as life happens, my first son was born during the spring of my first year teaching. His sister followed a couple years later, and I left teaching full-time then. So during a few years of the interim, I long-term subbed at and tutored at the Omaha Home for Boys. But 6 years ago, I was invited to finish out the school year teaching sixth grade science due to a teacher leaving in the middle of the year. So they were asking me to sub just to finish out the year. And here I still am 6 years later. So my youngest was in preschool, and I discovered that middle school is my jam. So here I am today. So I teach 6th and 8th grade integrated science, and I'm also the middle school science curriculum coordinator for our school. So in early 2017, I received an email about a professional development opportunity through LEAD held in conjunction with Game and Parks. So I love teaching, but I really missed my time in field biology. So to me, this training sounded like a great way to fill my cup and also to provide me with a fresh perspective on teaching. So I drove out to Indian Cave State Park, and I met Jamie and Monica. The 2-day workshop was packed with awesome information and activities to give teachers ideas for infusing natural history and exploration into our science class. It was also a special surprise to me because two of the guest speakers at that conference were former UNO colleagues of mine, Jeremy White and Dan Fogel. They were guest speakers there. And so it was really wonderful to reconnect with them after 15 years. So here are some photos of some things that we did at those two workshops. Because again, in 2018, I had the opportunity to attend a lead workshop. That time it was in Wood River. Both the workshops were really different in the perspectives due to the different ecology of the areas, but both covered a really wide range of biology topics and ideas to integrate new lessons with my students. So these are lessons that would take them out of the classroom. I had always been a little edgy in my teaching, to be honest with you, traipsing 160 middle schoolers, 20 at a time, but 160 altogether, outdoors around our campus to do science really didn't scare me. So I was really excited to get some new ideas to do this. So here's pictures of some of the things we did at the workshop. We're invertebrate sampling there in the river. And a great memory, I say sarcastically, of that day. The day was filled with great memories, but this is not one of them. I felt something odd on my back. And so I asked a teacher whom I had just met the day before to take a look at it. And she pulled out a good sized Lone Star tick right on my back. So fun times. So we learned all kinds of things at the lead workshops. But honestly, though, these
to let you know, 3 minutes.
Honestly, though, these workshops were really what I personally needed. It got me back out in the field, doing and learning about things that I loved, reminded me that these are the things I can and should be sharing with my students. I mean, why can't we sample pond water at school, right? I mean, did students even know that we had cacti growing naturally in Nebraska soil? They didn't, but they do now. So during the workshops, I posted multiple things to my Instagrams. These are pictures of those, obviously. And I was surprised because my only followers on Instagram are my students. And I was surprised that even though it was summer, I was getting some likes. Like they continued to follow these Instagram posts and like them. I even had some that had comments on them. So I was getting these kids involved during their summer break. And so I consider that a really big success. So I have gained so much through these lead workshops. One, I've reconnected with former colleagues and I've also made new connections. All the speakers at the workshops were so talented and really top-notch in their fields. I've maintained social media connections with some of the people that I met. And I also, Jeremy White, who I reconnected with at the first one, he now is an annual speaker to my 6th graders. They call him the bat expert guy, but he comes every year now. So that's been great. So one of the perks also of attending these workshops is all the great stuff that I've gotten to take home. So this is just a picture of a few of the awesome field guides that I've acquired that I get to share with my students. And really, let's face it, radio tracking rattlesnakes earned me a decent amount of street cred with my middle schoolers. So that's always a bonus. All right, another thing, probably my biggest change after attending these workshops is that I was inspired to create an outdoor ed program in our 6th grade. So 8th grade already had an outdoor ed day each year, but these city kids in 6th needed it too. So we now have an annual trip to Mahoney State Park where the students go from place to place in the park, learning about different ecology topics. So at one station, you can see they're sampling pond water to determine the health of the pond. They learn to fish. They learn about some local flora. They get to meet the bat expert guy. And they just get to get outside and explore. They get to be kids. They get to be natural explorers. They get to be inquisitive, they get muddy, no books, no screens. Well, maybe some field guides. Those, I don't count those as books. Maybe some field guides or field journals. But, you know, while it's great that we can get on a bus and go to Mahoney State Park, we can also do this on our own campus. So I purchased a greenhouse through a grant for our school campus. It is not been constructed yet. It's currently sitting in our parish garage. And trust me, the maintenance director is really hoping I get it built before the snow falls. Also, my 2019 and 20 SAME team, that's an acronym for Society of American Military Engineers, known as our engineering club. They designed an outdoor classroom to be used in conjunction with our greenhouse. So besides designing plans for solar heating, light, watering system, they also designed space around the greenhouse for things like seating, landscaping, nature observation areas. They wanted to build a nature trail. They wanted to have a bird watching station. And the most exciting thing about this was the fact that it was all student driven. So students, I know, learn a great deal more when they're personally invested. They wanted this as part of their education. And although my SAME team was 8th graders who have now moved on to high school, any part of those plans that come to fruition will be a legacy that they'll be proud of. So really, my big takeaway from the LEAD workshops and the thought I want to educate is those kids outside. Here you can see some LEAD chromatography we set up. The students ran campus collecting leaves. We got back to the classroom. They used some keys to identify what those trees were. They took color tracings of them, and then we dropped them in alcohol and set in some filter paper. They made predictions about what colors they thought those trees were going to turn in the fall. So a really neat thing. The suspense, because they had to wait a couple of weeks before they could find out if their chromatography was accurate or not. I also decided to teach the kids about keeping field journals, which is one of my favorite parts of field research and something that I was reminded of at the LEAD workshops. We went out where they were given free rein to just compile questions and observations about anything they saw, and they were driving that exploration. In science, I fully understand and appreciate the process for explicit at times. That process is driven by observation and it's driven by asking questions. And so the students were encouraged to use all their senses and to take notice of things that they would otherwise ignore. Here's a couple of them you see there in the grass, comparing notes in their field journals and enjoying that warm sunshine. So just really to close, I want to say again, get those kids outside and get them exploring. Thanks.
That was amazing, Tiffany. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could stop sharing your screen.